Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Hey, race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to the Drafting the Circuits program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we do our 2021 in review, our final show of the year. Joining me for the spectacular is Richard Youden and Louise Torres. Guys, how we doing?
Hey, how's it going?
It's almost a happy Christmas.
Almost happy.
Getting
Yeah.
there.
I mean, by the time you folks listen to the show, it'll be Christmas. So anyway, another bit of sad news this morning. When I popped open my news feed and I saw a post from Brad Keselowski saying that he had lost his dad. His dad, of course, Bob Keselowski, who had raced in the ARCA series, and actually he won an ARCA championship at one point in time and raced in the truck series. And we've had too many of these this year. And sad for the family, and especially around the holidays. It always seems if somebody goes around the holiday and it seems to be especially sad. But our thoughts go out to the Keselowski family. They've that whole family has been big in stock car racing for decades. So but we are thinking about them. But since we are doing our year in review, I guess we could do a little in memoriam. Just mention all the folks we've lost this year, and it's a pretty big list with some really big names on there. But if we start to just think through who we've lost this year, we've lost team owners like Pat Patrick and Frank Williams. We lost Max Mosley, who was the president of the FIA. We've lost journalists like Murray Walker, Robin Miller, Bob Jenkins. We lost a number of drivers, Carlos Reutemann, both Unser brothers, Al and Bobby, as well as Bobby Unser Jr. Johnny Dumfries passed away. Bob Bondurant, Andre Ribeiro, whose claim to fame was he's the first guy to take a Honda engine to victory in an Indycar race. John West Townley, who died in a bizarre circumstance, as well as Natalie Malliot was another just kind of odd death. She was the director at Spa, and she also ran in the NASCAR Euro Series. We lost Del McCoward, Briggs Cunningham, NASCAR driver Jack Ingram, Eric McClure, Rusty Cruz, T.E. McHale, who was involved with Honda. He wasn't most of the casual fans won't know him, but anybody in the paddock and in the sports knows T.E. He was always there at the Honda, always had the best hospitality events in the paddock there. Rob Foote was a marshal, killed a Brands Hatch. Jason Dupasquier, motorcycle racer. Carl Pasterak from the NASCAR Modified Tour. Brian Lear, the crew chief. Kerry Teague. Graham McRae, great driver from the 70s. He lost his battle this year. Dylan Cromwell, NHRA member, then we had family members of folks like Nancy Wood and Bernice Wood, both who were with the Wood Brothers family, passed away this year. Imogene McDuffie, whose husband was J.D. McDuffie, and you'll recall we had Brock Beard on here. He's written a book on J.D. McDuffie's life there. Ramo Stott, another great driver there. And Charlie Glossback, first guy to go 200 miles at Talladega. Steve Richards from PRN. Just a lot of folks in the business we've lost this year. Wanted to just take a minute to just remember all of them. This year seems like, I don't know if it is or it isn't, but it seems like it's been tougher than a lot of years. We are reaching a point where a lot of people from a certain era are getting a certain age. When you see some of these, big names just suddenly not with us anymore, you realize that time marches on and stops for no one. So
No,
nope.
most certainly, for sure. And also on the top of that, Danny Earnhardt, who was Dale Sr.'s brother, who's also been heavily involved with JRM over a number of years. That's another one. But yeah, it's been a tough year in the racing world. Even on my end, we lost a couple classmates, two of them, and of course Richard with Frank, who worked with him over the years as well. So it's kind of hit home for a lot of us personally.
And certainly we lost our own colleague at Drafting the Circuits, Gray Warren, passed away this year. That's hit us certainly closest to home. We all knew and loved Gray and enjoyed working with the man. So, again, just a tough year. But so let's talk about the year in racing. Let's get us on to a happier subject. And 2021 certainly offered a happier look at racing than 2020 did. We were back to having fans at the racetracks. We're back to having full schedules of races going off on their scheduled dates on Sunday. We no longer had to be transfixed for a whole weekend with watching NASCAR guys race video games because there was no real action on the track. So, so it's nice to get some bit of normalcy back there. There's still a few hiccups and bubbles here and there. We still, IndyCar is still not racing in Canada. NASCAR didn't make their Canadian swing. There were a few Formula One races that were moved, but some of the venues that picked to move them to were pretty interesting and fun to watch for sure. But yeah, so let's start just kind of dissecting this year with just a couple of different categories and topics, and let's start with what was the biggest surprise of the year. Okay. And I'll start here. For me, the biggest surprise of the year was Alex Palou. We knew the kid was good. We knew that he was picked up by Ganassi. But we also know that, Ganassi is largely built around Scott Dixon. And since Dario left that team, Dixon's been the only one on that team to actually contend for a championship. And here, Alex Palou, second year in the series, out of the box, wins the championship in fine form too. The kid barely put a wheel wrong all year long. He was very smooth, very Dixon-esque at times, which is what it takes to win titles if you just look at a guy like Dixon's record. So I thought that was my biggest surprise of the year. That, like I said, I knew he would be good. I didn't think he would, contend for and win a championship year two. I think the only downside to Palou as the champion is that he's kind of quiet. He's not very active on social media compared to somebody like a Newgarden or a Hinchcliffe or even a Pato O'Ward. So he's a little harder to market as a star. But again, so is Scott Dixon. So if we draw the Dixon comparison there, I think Palou for me was the biggest pleasant surprise of the year. Now, Richard, what was your biggest surprise of the year?
We're talking IndyCar, or we're talking any series in general?
We're talking motor racing.
Motor racing in general.
Anything at all. Yes, I picked an IndyCar one for mine, but you can certainly talk about anything you like, from a soapbox derby to a Formula One.
And anything in between. Biggest surprise. I don't know, for me, obviously, the biggest one I think, though, you mentioned in IndyCar's performance, but I'm trying to pick maybe a surprise that goes the other way as a disappointing surprise rather than a good surprise, if you like.
Oh, I have that as a topic for later. Biggest disappointment.
Oh, okay. So
I guess I should have phrased it as the biggest pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and okay, I probably wouldn't say it's a surprise, but I think it was a good execution of what we all knew, and that was Kyle Larson. Everybody knew the kid had the talent and the ability, and obviously, everything that went on with him in 2020 sort of made us a bit, what's going to go on here? And we all wanted him to see him in a top drive, and no disrespect to Ganassi. And I think it was the surprise that he went there and dominated the season in the way that he did, and that he won the first, year at Hendrick. I don't think it's a surprise that he's a NASCAR champion. I think, as I say, more a surprise of when he did it. But the kid's impressive, so maybe is it a surprise? In a way, but that was one of the big things that I'll sort of take. That the Formula One side, there's the odd race here and there that I would consider a surprise. Ocon winning or Ricciardo winning, but and the 23 races going down to the very final lap, I guess, was a surprise by Formula One standard, and maybe the whole fallout and how the final few laps there were managed would be considered a surprise, because normally Formula One everybody looks at as like the pinnacle of organization and sort of de facto race management from a steward standpoint. Not in a disrespectful manner. We sort of come to expect and almost enjoy some of this sort of farcical sort of stewarding in maybe a NASCAR race. And for any of you follow any of the old British humor from the 1970s, you can imagine a little bit of the old Benny Hill music going on in the background while they were trying to organize the end of the season Abu Dhabi race there with the stewards. But are they surprises? I don't know, but certainly points of interest and note anyway.
All right, and Louise?
Team Penske. Here's why. Aside from Joseph Newgarden, Team Penske, and maybe Ryan Blaney, Team Penske as a whole took me as surprise of how they were not there, period. As far as race wins are concerned. Because they're really, they're locked for that matter. Because when you look at the IndyCar side, there were a couple instances where maybe Newgarden could have won early in the season. There's also Will Power that you felt like the red flag might have hurt him with the cooling system and all that costing him. And he just was not there. Pagenaud was a huge disappointment. And it would surprise me how Scott McLaughlin struggled a bit to where when Roman Grosjean was competing, Grosjean outperformed him all around the board in a car that you don't really expect. In the eyes of many people, don't expect him to be competitive. For me, obviously, we know a coin car can do good depending on who's in behind the wheel. We've seen that for years with Bourdais. We even saw a little bit of Ferrucci. And who knows, we'll see the same thing with Takuma Sato in 2022. And then on the NASCAR end, Blaney finally got the multiple wins under his belt. But for Keselowski and Logano to only get single wins, if I recall, that's a surprise because they've usually been there competitively winning multiple races or be out front. This year, they weren't really quite there compared to previous seasons. So that took me by surprise.
All right. So you obviously misunderstood the question about the biggest pleasant
No,
surprise.
that's I'm combining the surprise together. I got one that is more disappointing than Team Penske.
Oh, okay. You got. Okay. So let's move on to more happy stuff other than Team Penske's woes. Not like Roger's hurting. But the most memorable moment of the year, and I think we'd all be hard pressed to not say Helio Castroneves winning that fourth Indy 500, and his genuine reaction and the crowd's reaction. That's one for the history books, combined with Helio's fantastic drive that took him there. I mean, this is not one that fell into his lap. This is one where he displayed a tremendous amount of skill and experience. And again, to a very surprising Alex Palou, who was right there toe-to-toe with him to the end.
No, for sure. And I still feel like had Palou won that 500, the championship would have been decided at Laguna, or maybe a little bit earlier when you look back at it. But for sure, that one would also take my pick for the most surprise. I'll come up with another one, but that one was the first thing I thought of, because just the thought that Castroneves was quick. It was quick. You just didn't expect to be right up there because all the talk was about Dixon and Renus VK and all those guys that have been quick all across the board. And Castroneves was quietly lurking there, but nobody really thought about it much. But he was quick, and he showed in that Meyer Shank machine that he still got what it takes to get it done in Indy. And to see it firsthand, it's still hard to fully express it, how big of a deal that is, that 500.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So now Richard, over the pond there,
Mhm.
there were a number of memorable moments in Formula One this year, including some records being broken. So, what would you say would be your most memorable moment of 2021? And it doesn't have to be Formula One. I'm just throwing that
Yeah, I
out
mean, I think if we do look at that, obviously as you say, the records broken, some of the records that Hamilton broke, some of the performances and drives that Verstappen put in, and of course that, as we mentioned a minute ago, that final lap in Abu Dhabi there. But I think I don't think that the biggest impression or the most memorable takeaway from the season isn't one individual moment. I don't think and again, this is maybe something that I've sort of broached on this show before. I think it's a culmination of events and a culmination of events which has led us to, a legendary season that's had two drivers at the top of their game, pushing each other to unbelievable heights of performance that probably neither of them ever thought they could get to. And I don't think they'd have got to if they didn't have their appropriate rivals out there to push them. So I think the most memorable thing from the whole season is that gain of performance and that gain of level that two very, very, very competent teammates in Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas have been nowhere near obtaining those levels. And that for me has been the most memorable thing, seeing those two guys week in, week out just destroy the competition and push each other further and further.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that because we've been talking about that all year, that we're in the midst of watching one of the most fantastic seasons ever. And it's certainly, again, like I say, even with the records being broken, it's one for the record books, just as far as,
phenomenal.
The level of competition.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah. So now let's talk about some of these other, the good news, bad news stuff. What the biggest upset? Sports, we like to talk about a big upset. So Louise, I'll let you lead off this one. I don't want to start all of them, but the biggest upset of the year
is honestly a toss-up of 3 for me. Of course, Michael McDowell winning the Daytona 500 it was a big upset in the sense that front row had been good on point tracks. They just at times don't get the result how they do on the track. And McDowell being one of those prime examples, for him to get it done, put himself in the excellent position, obviously, when Penske imploded in that final lap with Logano and Keselowski opened the door for McDowell. That, to me, was a huge upset still, because it's just how long of a journeyman McDowell has been from starting parks, even before starting parks, Star Mazda and all that, Pro Mazda, and then go to starting park purgatory to now being a 10-year veteran to the series, and finally got the win that I felt like he's been in the mix every now and then. The second one is Esteban Ocon and Alpine at Hungary. I was never expecting Alpine to be a contender for wins or let alone podiums this season. For Ocon get that win, it kind of boosted the confidence and morale of that team. They kind of carried into the second half of the season with Alonso with the podium at Qatar, to even Ocon being just about a second away from getting a podium at Jeddah. So that one was a huge surprise, considering Ocon was gone out of Formula One for a couple of years, didn't have the greatest reputation when he was with Force India. So for him to get it done, that took me by a huge surprise. And last but not least is Tate Fogelman at Talladega when he got wrecked. The kind of anybody in the truck series got wrecked at some point, because that was the tail of the season. If you would have told me, I know it's Talladega, I know you get all that shenanigans, but I was never in a million years I expected Tate Fogelman to get a win based on his luck and performance since he's been in the truck series a year ago. So those 3 are the ones that stood out to me most.
Okay, and now Richard, biggest upset.
I mean, Formula One wasn't really an upset. I mean, yeah, you can look at a couple of those races, but the biggest upset, and I'm going to put an event down, a moment rather than actual race. The biggest upset was the restart with 2 laps to go at Azerbaijan when Hamilton screwed up that restart and went straight on at turn 1. There's just an upset because they just don't make mistakes like that, and a team like Mercedes don't make mistakes like that, and it you could argue it cost them the world championship. And that led to Perez winning the race, which wouldn't necessarily call an upset, but it was certainly that individual moment in time was a huge upset and a huge shock because they don't make mistakes like that.
Certainly, yeah, and that falls right into Ocon winning there. For me, there weren't a ton of surprise winners out there that you could really call an upset. I mean, certainly, again, Meyer Shank winning the Indy 500 can be considered an upset, but when you've got a ringer like Elio Castroneves behind the wheel, that you're stacking the deck a little bit. But if you just look at the stats for the year overall, I find it quite surprising, or that the one Formula One manufacturer team that has a 1-2 this year is not Red Bull, it's not Mercedes, it's McLaren. McLaren has the only 1-2 on the season, which I think that's that's pretty incredible right there, that we didn't see the Red Bull fellas or the Mercedes fellas finish 1-2 on the podium at all.
Yep.
Yeah, to think McLaren were the only ones to do that.
I know, right? And that's and McLaren has just been improving, and I'm looking forward to see what they've got next year. I really am. So, but let's talk about the biggest debacle or the biggest disaster. Let's say other than the finish of the championship.
Oh,
other than that, because we've already.
Do we want to talk? Want to talk about the whole NASCAR officiating season? Because we could.
We can. I was thinking more like a specific event, like like Spa would be one.
Oh, yeah,
certainly, but
get money back.
Yeah, but for me, the Cup cars at the Brickyard.
Yeah, that was
a mess. That was a mess. I mean.
I'm not counting. I still stand it's the worst race of the year. I don't count Spa. That was.
I don't count that as a race. Yeah, but I mean the Cup guys at the Brickyard made the Indycars at Nashville look like geniuses. You know what I mean?
I've got one.
That was a mess. So go ahead, Richard.
I've got one. The Cup cars at Bristol on the dirt.
Oh
yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to talk.
It was just a complete farce.
It was DOA. First off, you don't have a choose rule where dirt racing, like a choose rule is a common staple around a dirt racing. It's not that hard to put a cone on a bull rope and pull it out once the decision was made of where they're going to restart. It's not that difficult. That was the first red flag in my book. But continue.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, look, I don't have a problem with the Cup Series dirt racing. It's great. I think it can be entertaining. I think it can be, everything that they want it to be. But go to a goddamn dirt track. Don't go to a don't put a round peg in a square hole, which is basically what they were trying to do. They were trying to go, nobody turns up and watches the Bristol races anymore. After it used to be the one sellout of the season, or twice a season, nobody goes to watch these things. So what are we going to do? Pour so many tons of mud on the damn thing and expect it to be a spectacle. And it was a spectacle, but for the wrong reason. No, I just think that they completely lost what they were trying to do.
Still can't get over the truck race. They tried to get going, but one lap in, everybody's windshield was caked with so much mud, nobody could see where they were going.
That was like a quarter of the field. That was a heat race.
Yeah, and that was the mess. Yes, again, to your point. But what are we doing now? Now we're going to build a track inside a football stadium. So again, we'll see how that goes.
One is pavement, it is another being dirt.
Yeah, I mean, build a proper dirt track, and it'd be great, and have the proper facilities, the proper setup, and I think it'd be fantastic. But don't, they just, that wasn't a smart move in my book. That was,
Yeah,
unfortunately, dare I say, typical NASCAR trying to.
you did give me an idea for as far as the most disappointing thing. I was going to mention one thing, but now that you brought up something out of my memory bank, I got one better.
Okay, so do you want to wait till we get to the topic of biggest disappointment, or do you just want to?
I don't know. I thought we were talking about it right now.
No, we're talking about the biggest debacle.
Oh, debacle.
Yeah.
Okay,
Debacle.
then
Yeah.
let me talk. Okay, debacle. This is more of a debacle. Jeez.
How about it?
Anyways,
Yep. Go for it.
debacle. Truck Series season. Bad. I don't know how in the world. I know it's it's like the third division in NASCAR. I get that. I don't know if it's the lack of practice. Some people say it's the lack of practice. Some people say no, the lack of practice hasn't been the issue. Oh, it's the race surface. Oh, it's the circuit and all that. No, it's the whole season, and I point to Knoxville in the Truck Series. Good grief! How do you stink up the joint towards the very end? How do you fall flat on your face in that one? You did find an Eldora. I get it. Eldora's a different track than Knoxville, but how do you fall blue to the face at the very end of the Knoxville race? The final, 10 laps lasted like 2.5 hours to me. And it's like, I think it goes down to the drivers. It's like back in the Truck Series, especially in the Pinnacle, you had veteran drivers, established drivers from the West Coast as well, that knew their common ground. I think it boils down to a generational thing to where you have a lot of kids that just tear up race cars with no consequences. And those veteran drivers.
You got a lot of very young drivers in a Truck Series. Yeah, you got a lot of just little kids out there.
Yeah, you don't have what you had in the 2000s, where you have former Cup guys that are now in their 40s setting the tone. When you had your Ron Hornaday, Jack Sprague, Todd Bodine, who's going to run a few races next year as we speak.
Is that the purpose of the Truck Series, though? Is it the purpose to, you want those? That's, if you look at NASCAR and the ladder at NASCAR, if you want to get into the Cup Series, your traditional progression will be ARCA, then Truck, then Xfinity, then Cup.
No, for sure.
Do you want, half a dozen 45-year-old guys running around, maybe competing, maybe not? A
bunch of old guys reliving their younger days.
Yeah,
it kind of gained that identity for a little bit, but you had that mixed blend of younger guys, veterans, and those who are getting second chances back then.
Yeah.
These days, it's more of like a little bit of second chance, but also more or less just mostly a breeder system. And some of them bode well in trucks, some of them don't. Like Harrison Burton, you saw in trucks, he was meh, but in a car, he did a lot better.
But you wouldn't see it in any other series. You wouldn't see, Castro Neves drop down to Indy Lights. You wouldn't see, Kimi going to run a Formula. Well, you may see that with Kimi. Sorry, that was a bad example. But you wouldn't see an experienced driver in any other series apart from Cup racing drop to a lower category. I mean, in GP2, if you win the championship in GP2, you're not allowed. That's it. You're done. So it's I think that I know what you're saying in terms of some of the standards of driving and the like, but I don't think backfilling those seats with some of these older guys is the way to go. I think they need to learn.
I want to say when NASCAR introduced the Truck Series, and I remember when it was new, it really wasn't an established part of the ladder. It was just kind of on its own. It was just kind of out there, a standalone, which attracted some of these older guys to it. But now it is an established part of the ladder. So
and I think
it should
paved the way for that with Biffle and Busch and what we saw from them. And
again, it should be populated with young guys wanting to move up. But I want to say that very early years of Truck Series, it was kind of they didn't really know where it fit in in the scheme of things, it was, just a bit of a standalone. It was a bit of a novelty, honestly.
If anything, it was kind of like top level for West and Southwest drivers to compete.
Yes,
on
certainly. It was. They were closer to the Cup cars than they were to the Xfinity cars, or the Busch cars, as they called it back then. So, and I don't know if NASCAR needs that rung on the ladder. Honestly, I for years I thought they could just, take the truck and Xfinity and combine them, particularly since the Xfinity series really suffers from a lack of viewership. You could just put a little more power in them trucks there and make that the second rung on the ladder, and then put a little more focus on ARCA. But then again, I don't run NASCAR, so there we go.
Me neither. But yeah, the biggest debacle is just kind of the whole Truck Series season as a whole, with Knoxville being the highlight. That's just how it's like, and also Martinsville, because it depends on who you talk to. So there's so many opinions, and at the end of the day, it's like, what is going on here? And it was just rough. Hopefully in 2022, it's the quality, the product is much better, because I said it that 2021 might have surpassed 2017. It's probably one of the worst in terms of quality the season that's ever had for the Truck Series.
All right, so here's an interesting question, totally off the subject of racing and racing action and debacles and surprises, but more on the aesthetic. What was your favorite livery of a race car this year? And there were some nice ones, and there were some ugly ones.
Well, I'm not going to tell the ugliest one in my book, but I'll tell you.
Do tell.
It's a toss-up of Brandon Brown's in Nashville. What in the world was that? Is it trying to look like a guitar? That one just didn't that one just was his eyesore, excuse me. Ricky Stenhouse, Tide Kroger. What was that? That's not a Tide, right? That's just a hybrid of just JTG Daugherty's paint schemes just being so bad. It's like they could be good, but they're just so bad around the board that it's making it difficult. But as far as my favorite livery is concerned, it's a toss-up between the Gravedigger car that Harvick drove in Nashville, and honestly, the other one that stood out to me most is, quite honestly, Elio's Indy 500 livery. That one,
yeah, the pink and black that's really good. Well, and that's Harvey's livery throughout the season as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like a reverse. I don't know. It's just like when you add a little pink and black, it looks more meaner. When I think of pink and black, I think of the Hart Foundation, like Bret Hart and all of that. So to me, it's like that looks like a mean machine. And of course, it was fitting that car won the 500, because I think that one was a nice looking livery. Those are the ones that top of my head. I'm going to imagine there's a lot more, but those are the ones that stand out immediately.
Oh, definitely a lot of really good looking cars out there. Yeah. For me, I particularly liked, even though it's a very simple and understated livery, was the Will Powers, the matte black 5G Verizon. You know what I mean? And I think that's a bit of a response to the fact I really liked the old, the black and white with red trim Verizon that they had. Then they went to that god awful silver car that was a dull silver for a number of years, including, that's why I don't own the diecast of Will Powers Indy 500 winner, because that dull silver for me, it just nothing for me. But the matte black 5G Verizon car for Will Power, just black with some, white lettering and a little red trim. Very simple, very understated, but a darn fine looking car. And another one I really liked was the McLaren cars on both sides of the pond, both their Formula One cars and their Indy cars. I do like that papaya orange. I like the fact that it's very prominent in the thing. I like the blue highlights in it. So now, Richard, how about you?
Well, I've got two from the Formula One season, and of course, the McLaren livery, as you mentioned, is it's a pretty stunning livery. But I wanted to pick their one-off livery that they ran at Monaco, with the sort of classic Gulf, light blue and papaya orange highlights to it. I thought that was a hark back to the sort of days of the Le Mans 1960s and 70s Le Mans car. Looked stunning, that livery. And the other one was the special livery that Red Bull ran for Honda, the all white car looked fantastic. Yeah, that was really good, especially for Red Bull. Red Bull is a purely a marketing livery, and you're never going to see it change too much.
Yeah, it looks like
all white.
Yeah, it looks like a can of Red Bull.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
Yep.
you look at a Red Bull from when they first came in the mid 2000s there to the car you see today. It's pretty much the same livery, but that white, yeah, like that. I think they did a really, really good job with that. And yeah, as I say, that McLaren there was pretty nice as well.
Absolutely. All right. So now, Louise, are you ready for your biggest disappointments now?
Yeah, let's go.
Or have you run out of stuff you're disappointed about since you've been?
Oh, come on. I said some boss. You didn't give me another option to say the memorable moment. You just stuck with the Elio one, which I do agree, which I don't have no problem with. But you just gave me that brief explanation as my memorable moment. But that's fine.
That's fine.
The most disappointed, honestly, from a genuine perspective, is Harrison Burton. You go from winning right out of the gate in Xfinity in 2020, winning multiple races, probably be a title contender, to just kind of be a complete afterthought in 2021. That genuinely surprised me, more so that he's going to the Cup Series next season. Go after having a not so good year. He was in the playoffs. He had some good finishes, but never really, honestly, in the mix for wins. Never was. Was genuinely surprised me, because Harrison is a highly touted driver. I still stand that he and Todd Gilliland are the two regional drivers in the recent years that I view in high regard. Harrison being the East, and obviously Todd out West. And both of them are going to be Cup rookies in 2022, but I'd expect Harrison to be a title favorite in 2021, but he wasn't really in that picture at all.
Yeah, what do you think? It was a bit of a sophomore jinx.
If I'm hoping that's the case, but we won't know since he's going to Cup. So much so that his teammate, who's no longer his teammate anyway, won the championship in the finale, in Daniel Hamburg. And Hamburg had more shots of winning than Harrison. No discredit to Daniel. He's also a heavily touted driver, but when you look at the bigger picture, you expect Harrison to be more of a guy that wins races rather than Daniel, because it's just how he's never won on a national level or a NASCAR sanctioned event in ages. That to me was the biggest disappointment. Another one is Jack Harvey. I thought he'd be going for more podiums and maybe get a win under his belt. He really wasn't much in the mix. It's just unfortunate, and I'm really hoping going from Meyershank to Ray Hall, maybe it'll reignite something. It'll be curious to see how he does at Ray Hall, but he was another one that took me by surprise. Now, I'm not going to mention Rossi because I think I mentioned it last year.
Yeah, I was going to throw Rossi into the mix there, because he's but this is the fact that Rossi is the biggest disappointment. Well, 3 years running, right? So, I mean,
it starts to become a norm rather than a disappointment, doesn't it?
Makes you wonder if the problem is him or the team, So,
yeah.
Because I see Colton Herta winning races. Anyway, so Richard, for you, what was it? Disappointment for you?
I think there's been two things that have really stood out, and unfortunately, and they sort of transcend the sporting world into society. Really, the reaction from the whole Brandon Brown winning Talladega and that whole outcome of that, with the sort of chants and the memes, and I mean, it's become a whole industry in itself now.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of those in Phoenix.
Yeah, and Brandon Brown actually gave an interview, or he started to give some interviews, talking about that and how it's affected him on a personal level. And people forget that, I've got friends who, mention this sort of phrase, this catchphrase, if you like. And I said to them, well, do you know who this Brandon kid is? They don't have a clue.
Yeah, people don't have a clue. They just think
99% of people do not have a clue who it is or how it's affected this kid and what it's doing to his career prospects. Admittedly not a top level driver. But,
well, admittedly though, this win for him, right, should be his shining moment in the sun, you know?
Yeah.
Instead, because of a series of relates largely unrelated to, you know, him winning the race has kind of thrust his name into the spotlight, and most people don't even know who the hell he is, like you said.
No, and I think that's really, really disappointing. And you know, it's just, yeah. I mean, that is what it is. And the other one on a sort of similar note is, has come out in the media today with a statement. The backlash that Nicholas Latifi has received from the incidents around Abu Dhabi. You know, yeah, his accident or his spin and subsequent wreck there brought out the safety car, which ultimately decided the 2021 World Championship. But you know, some of the reactions on social media and the like, and has been totally uncalled for. And you know, he even said in his press release today, you know, he deliberately turned. You know, as soon as the checkered flag dropped, he knew what was coming, and that's pretty sad in itself. That, you know, he knows that this is what's going to happen. You know, we all like, and one of the great things about social media is that we can, you know, we see the humanistic side of the drivers in some instances, and people can interact, or like to think they're interacting with the drivers, and you know, they have this relationship with the driver because they like to tweet or whatever. You know, it's all silly, really. But you know, it is another level of access which we don't normally get in Formula One, and now, but of course, it does make these guys susceptible to this sort of like online abuse, which is totally uncalled for and totally just so disappointing that you know, sport, which is supposed to be a break from normal life and the bullying and the narcissistic behavior and the politics that we see week in, week out, and it's just been dragged straight into the mainstream media is just, it's so disappointing.
So disappointing. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, especially you know, poor Brandon Brown. I mean, that kid didn't do anything to
No,
have his name associated with that. So I mean,
Yeah,
really,
it's an absolute shame as well. And not just that, it's just there was so much stuff going on, not just with Brandon Brown. I still ponder whether or not I should feel bad for Kelly Stabis as well, who got with the whole deal, because TB, you know, with TB, sometimes you hear one thing, sometimes you hear the other, but it gets so complicated because they don't know what they're going through in the sense of what they're hearing over the headset. And also, it's just so much stuff going on, but we don't know how it's impacted Stav at this point yet. We know with Brandon how that's affected him, because it's like you said, it's supposed to be a monumental moment for the family-led team that operates in two different shops, one in North Carolina, one in Virginia. So they put a lot of money into that team, and now it's affected him to where some companies may not want anything to be involved with him, which is an absolute shame. Because Brandon has been one of those underdog drivers that has been quietly good, made a playoffs last year as well, and that in itself was meant a whole lot to him. So we'll see how 2022 is going to shape up for him. You'll have TJ Majors as a spotter, so we'll see how it goes.
Well,
But
I mean, you know, yeah, if there's any consolation, is these things kind of tend to have a rather short life to them until people move on to the next thing that they're
we'll see
chatting about. Yeah,
I think this one's gained. I mean, I must admit, when it all happened, I know it's a little bit stupid, but I think this has, you know, gained way more traction than I ever expected. And you know, I just walk around some of the stores here in you know, North Carolina, and the number of T-shirts and the number of things, you know, it's like, wow, you know,
there were so many of them at Phoenix. Like,
oh yeah.
Everywhere I look, everywhere I turn, there was a chant, or there was a shirt, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like they're not going to listen to what Steve Phelps said, and they're going to take action for those who ever made those stuff for sale. Hell, I even saw that phrase at my local mall.
Yeah. Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's gone to that point.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well,
let's anyway, moving on.
Anyway, for a couple things I was disappointed with this year. I was very disappointed that the Nashville IndyCar race didn't go better. I understand that the event was great. The crowds were great. The crowd was enthusiastic. And the race has been renewed. It's going to be back on there next year. All the event sponsors are back in for next year. But I'm just disappointed for those fans that to a lot of folks this will be their first exposure to IndyCar racing, and that is what they had to see, you know. And a lot of the issues were just with the overall design and the layout of the track, and the place where they chose to have restarts was not, you know, a wise decision. In my eyes, we should have had the restarts back on that long straightaway going towards the bridge. But you know, it's behind us now. It is what it is. But I'm very disappointed that was an opportunity to capture a ton of new fans. You know, Nashville is a growing city. It's one of the bigger markets. It's a big sports market too. They've done well with their football and the hockey team they have down there, the Predators. And you know, I just hated that's the way it went. You know, and this is what folks' first exposure to IndyCar is. So I'm hoping that they get a great crowd next year. That they, you know, Tony Khan was talking about, you know, making some changes to the track, some changes to the layout, and hopefully they'll put on a better show next year. But I found that particularly disappointing as a bit of a missed opportunity, or a fumbled opportunity, bungled opportunity. Yeah. So yeah. So all right. So we're getting close to the end of the show. So let's talk about Richard. What are you most looking forward to seeing in 2021?
Oh, 2022, you mean?
2021.
Yes, 2022. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. 2022. Yeah. I feel like I lost a year. Boy. I lost a year somewhere.
Yeah, haven't we all? Yeah, well, there's so many interesting storylines that could potentially come in the next next year or so, and the two big ones, I think, from my mentality on an engineering standpoint, is going to be the new aero packages and regulations that we've seen in Formula One. You know, going for a more ground effect style car, and the next gen car in the Cup Series. Both are, you know, offering a lot and promising a lot. Whether they both deliver, who knows? But it's going to be fascinating to see the teams get to grips with that. And having talked to a few guys, especially on the NASCAR side, of how these cars are going to be built. I mean, it really, you know, talking to one of the guys, in theory, you can now have a Cup team of two mechanics. That's it. You buy a box of bits and box of parts and a few wrenches and what have you, and two guys within 3 or 4 days you can build a car. You know, phenomenal. You know, it really is. It's phenomenal. Now, of course, that won't be a competitive by any stretch of the imagination, but it really is. Yeah, there's an initial impact that the teams are going to face with the cost, but I think long term this is going to be a really beneficial scope for the teams out there, and I'm fascinated to see what it's going to do on the track. And unfortunately, it's going to be 2 or 3 races at least before we really get an idea, because we've got this dog and pony show over in the Coliseum, which is, I mean, you might as well give them those little, cars that 5-year-olds get at Christmas to ride around in. They may have more room than actually a proper stock car on a quarter-mile track or whatever it's going to be. And then
I just don't know why they don't.
I have severe expectations for that event. They got to be specifically met for it to be successful and worthwhile.
Yeah, but I just wonder why they don't just go ahead and make that the last event for the old cars and just wreck the shit out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, turn it into a demolition derby.
Yeah.
Have at it. But yeah, I mean, I just think that's all a little bit. That's going to be a bit silly. Then, of course, you got Daytona, which is whatever. And then I don't even know what the first air quotes real race is of 2022 on the Cup schedule.
I think it's Fontana after the 500's Fontana, which clashes with St. Pete, which I still have to figure that out.
I mean, that is ridiculous. So you go all the way over to LA for this ridiculous marketing stunt of the Clash or whatever they want to call it. Then you go all the way to Daytona. Then you go all the. I mean, Greta Thunberg must be having a field day with all that.
How dare you?
Sorry, but no, I think, and then in Formula One, obviously the new package, which is going to be visually very, very different. Obviously not a complete change in how the cars handle as you're going to see in the Cup Series, but certainly a change in the aero package and how these cars generate downforce. So yeah, that's going to be fascinating, and how the teams react, because it has been such a big uptake in resource. Are you going to see the teams like Mercedes and Red Bull that were pushed so hard in 2021, struggle to be up to the pace in 2022? And some of the teams that openly admitted that 2021 was a dud, in terms of car development on a major scale. The McLaren, Ferrari, Alpine, these sort of middle of the pack teams. How are they going to react? Are they going to suddenly take this big leap going into 2022 because they sacrificed 2021, despite winning races in Alpine's and McLaren's case? So yeah, there's going to be those first few months of 2022 on those two levels they're going to be fascinating.
All right, and I'll go next. A couple of things I'm really looking forward to in 22. We'll make sure we get the year correct. Would be. I'd really like to see how Takuma Sato does with Dale Coyne, and at the same time, I'm really interested to see how Romain Grosjean gets on at Andretti. Andretti seems to be a team in need of some help. Grosjean seems to be, if you look at what he did in the Coyne car, he seems to be a very contributing factor to success there. And, despite their shortcomings the last couple of years, Andretti still has all the pieces in place to make a run at the championship. Look no further than, Colton Herta winning some races last year. So all the elements are in place. And I'm wondering if Romain is the missing piece. And the other thing that I'm really interested to see, because a lot of people are kind of writing this guy off and downplaying it, but I really want to see how Jimmy Johnson performs at the Indianapolis 500. Yeah. There have been a number of guys that have come over that have not been IndyCar guys, right? That have come over and done well at the 500. Look no further than Kurt Busch a couple of years ago. Kurt came over and he represented himself and his series quite well with a great run to, I believe, sixth place and Rookie of the Year honors. But everyone's, writing Jimmy off, saying he won't qualify. He won't. But I mean, Jimmy on an oval in an IndyCar is a whole different game than Jimmy on a road course.
And he did improve towards the end of the season.
He did, but he was never a great road course guy to begin with. And the learning curve from stock car to an IndyCar is steeper on a road course than it is on an oval. And again, I go back to Dario Franchitti's comments that it's easier to get out of a stock car and get it in an IndyCar on an oval and see how far you can push the car than it is to get out of an IndyCar and into a stock car and see how much you have to dial it back or dial back.
And he'd know.
Yeah. And he would know. Yeah. So I think that Jimmy is going to, I don't think he's going to embarrass himself. I'm not going to say he's going to contend for the win or the pole, but I don't believe he's going to embarrass himself.
Quickly, Frank, sorry, how do you think Jimmy will do as having had 2021 under his belt? How do you think he's going to do as a full season, as a not a rookie and somebody that's got that experience behind him?
I feel like he'll still struggle in some places, particularly. I see him continuing to struggle at some of the street courses, the tighter ones. But I don't think he's going to be last place every week like he started out last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. He got a little bit better from that. We saw that at Laguna. Yeah,
I think we may see him on the podium once if a yellow comes his way and he's in the right pack of cars. I think he'll be like a regular middle of the pack. And finishing anywhere from 10th to 15th. Maybe get a couple of top 10s in there. Again, I don't expect him to contend for the championship, but I think,
No.
again, I think he'll do well at Indy. I mean, the guy's won the Brickyard
Mhm.
a couple of times. He knows his way around the track. He knows the fast
Very
line
true.
around the track. So, yeah, but I don't think he's gonna come out and challenge for wins. But I think he'll be several steps up from where he was a year ago.
Yeah.
But I think the guy you're gonna have to watch out for next year is Grosjean.
I agree. I think he was very impressive with the limited resources he had, didn't he?
Yep. And the other kind of disappointing guy last year was Scott Dixon.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering
one win,
which is for Scott Dixon disappointing, and not in the title fight at the end of the year, which for Scott Dixon is nearly unheard of. He hasn't,
especially when his teammate was the one that won the title. It wasn't like Ganassi were out to sea all year and he didn't. He was nowhere in the pack. His teammate was the one that was winning. So it's like that.
Yeah.
even Ericsson won twice.
Ericsson won twice. Yes, Ericsson beat him as well. So I don't know if Scott Dixon is winding up his career, or if he just had a little bit of an off season, and they're doing some structuring management structure changes at Ganassi this year, and we'll see how that works out. But I still think, I still feel like Scott he's just now 40. He's gonna be 42 this year, so he's still relatively in his prime. All things considered, when you consider the guy that just won the Indy 500 was 46. So
hope for me, hey.
No hope for me. I'm yeah. So Louise, what are you looking forward to in 22?
That Rookie of the Year battle for the Indianapolis 500. It is a curious one, because you not just have Roman Grosjean and Jimmy Johnson, but you also have Kyle Kirkwood, and also the younger guys that is more established on road courses like Devin DeFrancesco, Colin Mylaw, Christian Lundgaard. How will they do on the all of them, for that matter? How will they
got
do
a
on
strong rookie class? Yeah.
The only one that I think has experience on Kirkwood never he never had a chance at the Freedom 100. So we're looking at almost everyone in that rookie board with minimal to almost no oval experience on an open wheel cockpit. So Grosjean ran Gateway. Johnson's going to have Texas under his belt by that point, but Indianapolis just is a whole different animal. No matter how much experience, how good you are at ovals, that one is a completely different animal, to where sometimes you could be really good in Indianapolis. It may not reward you with success, but look no further. This would have been a perfect analogy if we still had Michigan, but if you look at Michael Andretti and Scott Goodyear, they had Michigan 500 wins, no Indy 500s to their names, but they showed they've been really good.
Those two guys nearly won the Indy 500 on a couple of occasions.
But yeah, that's the rookie battle. I am very curious and excited to see how that's going to unfold, because there's just so much unknowns. Some say Grosjean is the favorite. Some maybe think Kyle Kirkwood, perhaps, but we'll see. You don't know what will happen in Indianapolis. Sometimes you can be strong all month, and you may not get Rookie of the Year. And look no further than with Ed Jones in 2017. He was the best finishing driver, but Alonso had the better month of May. That's the key. You got to put an all-around good, strong month of May, not just the race itself sometimes.
And your name being Alonso doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And the fact that Alonso led laps on the race too,
That is
again,
true.
some people think that's the great robbery of all time, that Ed Jones was not named Rookie of the Year, but that one was really tough to call,
Yeah, it's real tough, but that's the one thing.
If there was ever a case for co-rookies of the year, and they've had co-rookies of the year at the 500 before, that would have been a good case for co-rookies of the year.
And one other thing is Scuderia Ferrari, how they're going to do with this package system. How will Carlos Sainz follow up a superb debut year into a new, different breed we have with the package and the regulations and also the budget cap? Because Sainz finishing fifth in a car that nobody really thought was going to be competing for podiums like Carlos was, much less Carlos be that guy that honestly outperform Charles Leclerc in a lot of races. Some of them, okay, correction.
Yeah.
Some of
He
them.
was impressive, but I still think Leclerc had the edge.
Okay. But yeah, I'd be curious to see Ferrari how they'll do. More so than McLaren, and more so than Alpine. I'm curious to see how Ferrari does, because they got momentum. I think the morale is a lot better than it was in 2020 and 2019. So that's a good homage, but we're basically starting at level, almost to a degree, back to square one to see who will this new all the new stuff benefit more. And I'm wondering how it'll help Ferrari, if anything.
And, it's almost sad to see Ferrari not contending for wins, because they're, again, one of the oldest marks in the sport. Traditionally, they've got a lot of wins, a lot of championships. They've had their up years and their down years, but, nobody likes to see Ferrari down for too long. They're too iconic of a brand to be, relegated to midfield. So
yeah, they're entering 2022 with a 2-year drought, which they haven't had since 92-93.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we are just about up at the end of the hour, so I'll give both of you a moment for a final thought on 21. Richard,
go ahead, Richard.
Oh, final thought on 2021. Sheesh. I mean, where do you start? About an hour ago in this show. Just controversy when it comes to the Formula One. It was a real shame, but I think Formula One will come back stronger. I think it will give an opportunity for the rule makers to really sit down and say, look, we need bulletproof rules here that have every set of contingencies as covered and the base is checked, and we move forward from there, because we certainly can never have a repeat of what we saw in Abu Dhabi. And it hurts and it's painful and it certainly wasn't good for the sport, but I think we're going to come back stronger from it.
All right. And Louise?
As much as a crapshoot it was 2021 with a lot of things in F1, NASCAR, IndyCar, I think, as we said at the top, we're in a much better direction than we were in 2020. I think when I look back at it, it was much more optimistic to what's ahead. So it's a different breed we're going to deal with in 2022 all across the board. I'd be curious to see how the established veterans adapt, because there's a lot of them that struggled. Some of them didn't even win. And the young guys just delivering, or the ones that we expected them to be on top, ended up being on top. So we'd be curious to see how both age groups adapt into 2022. And when I look back at 2021, I just look at it that way. And also the end of an era and many factoids. Like the people that we've lost on the IndyCar side, I still feel like the 500 is truly the end of an era of a certain age of IndyCar. So yeah, that's how I look at it, 2021, the end of an era and also the start of more optimism going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it is, like a changing of the guard, kind of year 2021 was, we had, again, like I stated last week, 3 champions, all under 30, with a lot of good racing years ahead of them. Fine crops of rookie drivers lined up for next year. And then you've got, even other guys in the wings like Oscar Pastrasi, who's kind of hoping to break into Formula One in 23 while he's taking a reserve driver role. Just a lot of great talent out there. If the seats can stay full with great talent and not, just filler, that makes it better for everybody. So, but with that being said, we are out of time. So I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. I want to thank you, Richard Youden, and you, Louise Torres. But most of all, I want to thank you folks that listen to us. We'll be taking our winter break. Everybody enjoy the holidays. Eat some good food, spend some time with your family. If you travel, be safe. We'll be back on in 2022, roundabout the time that the Rolex 24 is happening. Till then, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's who
Interwebsite, 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 interwebsite.